How to Love a Country is a statement. It's the title. It's also, in a way, a question. How do we love a country? What does that mean? And in the case of the United States, in the incredibly polarized, politically polarized world that we're living in right now, it's also in some ways a self-help book to sort of let us think about what are still the good things about one's country and what can we go back to and still appreciate as a way of surviving what is for many not the best time right now politically in America. So I'm going to read maybe a couple poems. One of them actually is one of the inaugural poems. President Obama asked me to write 3 poems for his inauguration, and they picked the one I read. This was the 3rd poem, and that they didn't pick, but it actually in part informed the title and the whole genesis of this book, and it's called Mother Country, or in Spanish, Madre, Patria. So for this poem, I reached back into my mother's own journey as a Cuban exile. My mother left her entire family behind in Cuba, her 8 brothers and sisters, her parents, every aunt and uncle, every niece and nephew. And I've always admired that courage. I've also felt that loss and longing that she had all her life, not ever being able to see these people or her country again. But I also started thinking what an incredible faith she must have had in the United States, in the ideals of the United States, and the promise of a better life that the United States has made to the world. And so this is a way of us thinking about a country through an immigrant's eyes, who always remind us in some ways who we are, because they hold the country up to a certain status, a certain bar, and they also constantly remind us of, again, who we are, because they make us see our country in a different way, and they don't take for granted what we often take for granted when we're born here or grow up here, as I did. Mother Country, Madre Patria. To love a country as if you've lost one. 1968, my mother leaves Cuba for America, a scene I imagine as if standing in her place. 1 foot inside a plane destined for a country she knew only as a name, a color on a map, or glossy photos from drugstore magazines. Her other foot anchored to the platform of her patria, her hand clutched around 1 suitcase, taking only what she needs most. Hand-colored photographs of her family, her wedding veil, the doorknob of her house, a jar of dirt from her backyard, goodbye letters she won't open for years. The sorrowful drone of engines, one last deep breath of familiar air she'll take with her. One last glimpse at all she'd ever known. The palm trees wave goodbye as she steps onto the plain. The mountains shrink from her eyes as she lifts off into another life, to love a country as if you've lost one. I hear her, once upon a time, reading picture books over my shoulder at bedtime, both of us learning English, sounding out words as strange as the talking animals and fair-haired princes in their pages. I taste her first attempts at macaroni and cheese, but with chorizo and peppers. And her shame over Thanksgiving turkeys, always dry, but countered by her perfect pork pernil and garlic yuca. I smell the rain of those mornings, huddled as one, under one umbrella, waiting for the bus to her 10-hour days at the cash register. And at night, the zzz, zzz, zzz of her sewing her own blouses and quinceañera dresses for her grown nieces, still in Cuba, guessing at their sizes. And the gowns she sold to neighbors to save for a rusty white sedan, no hubcaps, no air conditioning, sweating all the way through our first vacation to Florida theme parks, to love a country as if we've lost one. As if it were you on a plane departing from America forever. Clouds closing like curtains on your country, the last scene in which you're a madman scribbling the names of your favorite flowers, trees, and birds you'd never see again. Your address and phone number you'd never use again. The color of your father's eyes and your mother's hair, terrified you could somehow, someday, forget these. To love a country, as if I was my mother last spring, hobbling, insisting I help her climb all the way up to the U.S. Capitol, as if she were here before you today instead of me, explaining her tears, her cheeks pink as the cherry blossoms coloring the air that day, when she stopped, turned to me, and said, "You know me, home. It isn't where you're born that matters. It's where you choose to die. That is your country."